Hi, welcome to My Addiction. I'm Megan Weaver, and I'm here with...
Marti and Megan.
Not a big surprise.
Nope, still me.
Still you, still
your sister.
This is our... We've done, 5 episodes?
This is our sort of midway check-in, because... we've been at this, and you know what? I think we have at least 7 or 8 people who are listening.
Right.
Now, but the most exciting thing I want to talk about is recently you were the bartender on Watch What Happens Live.
That's right.
That, I can't tell you how excited I was for that. I basically flew to New York so I could be in the audience. My son, who has no idea what Bravo even is, was in the audience. And for him, it was like watching surrealist theater.
Yes. He didn't know who the players were.
No, he had no idea. But it was Michelle and Zach from The Valley.
Yes.
Because this can get into what I've been watching.
Yeah.
Which is The Valley.
Yeah, of course.
Which is like a Bergman film.
Yeah.
You're not watching?
Oh, no, I'm watching.
Okay, so you know.
It's dark.
Whew.
So let's just explain to everybody how it went. So you guys were backstage with me in the dressing room. Drew was there, Jed, your son.
Yep.
And we were all kind of hanging out. We got to talk to Andy. You guys got to meet Andy.
I was verklempt.
Yeah, he's so sweet.
He's a handsome man.
He's gorgeous.
Yeah, he's a handsome,
he's a really good-looking guy.
Man. I hope he's listening.
And also just very kind. He
is.
Couldn't be kinder and just was so sweet. But while we're kind of just corralled back there waiting for the show, the producers are coming in and checking in. But we can see Zach and Michelle sort of flitting about, right? I mean, it was a little bit of a frenzy.
Yeah.
In and out of their dressing room, in and out of their dressing room.
Yep.
And I think because I was so nervous.
Yes.
I was so nervous. And I think I was so nervous.
Yeah, you really were.
I was very nervous.
Yeah.
I think that because I don't drink, normally when you do
and
a
they
show,
have cocktails there. They
served on
me,
trays, whatever you may want, you may have. We'll refill your drink all throughout the whole thing. So
you were the bartender.
I was the bartender.
So that tells
you. I have been on, not on the show, but I've been to the show with Jeff Lewis in the past, just as his friend guest person, and you always drink. You always have a couple cocktails on the show. So just being there and actually getting to stand behind the bar, which was so cool, and not sort of calming your nerves or whatever it is. I can't imagine anybody's not a little bit nervous be on that show. But then not having that liquid, numbing potion was one of the first times I've ever done something like that without having a drink to calm my nerves.
It's funny because we were talking before, and I'm like, this is what you do. You are a total natural, and you were gorgeous and shining, and nobody in a million years. And I think, like you said, you relaxed once you.
I was fine once I got out there. I just didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And it was
you also don't know what they're going to ask you.
Didn't know what they were going to ask me. Didn't want to get into some of the stuff I didn't want to talk about. But he didn't. It was great. No. It all went off without a hitch.
As a sober person, that's an interesting thing about The Valley too. Is the storyline with Jax is, is he an addict? Is he, and his sort of, I was sort of relating to his reluctance to go to rehab. Mm-hmm. Until you're ready, if you think you're doing it for somebody else,
it's never going to work.
It's not going to work. Or if somebody else forces you to go, I think that can work, but it's percentage-wise probably way more, helpful if you're at the point where you're like, I need, you're saying, I need help.
I need this for myself.
And I'm willing to do what they tell me to do.
Right.
But he was already, if you're watching the show, this is turning into such a Bravo show, but if you're watching the show, but there's crossover.
Yeah, there's crossover. Well, there's addiction there.
Yeah. I mean, he was very much 30 days, I can't do that. I won't do that. He was already bargaining with the process, and I was like, this doesn't look good for right now. Unfortunately, many people have to go more than once. But it was, just to take it back to the Watch What Happens thing, it was just so interesting to see both of them, because they're both, on a show that is just it is you're watching people deal with these big big life, real, like people, children, people with, but they're still Bravo stars.
Yes. I know. It's pretty dark.
Messy. No, I've been having like one of my friends was like, I honestly can't watch because it's too.
Well, I can relate to not being able to watch because I have to tell you, and this is my personal experience, and I'm not calling anybody anything, and I'm not saying, but watching Jesse drink in the morning is very triggering to me.
I get that.
Because I used to, like, after a big night,
Yeah.
I would have a drink in the morning. Now, generally this was when I was on the weekends and stuff. I couldn't drive or go to
you're
work,
on vacation, so you justify starting at 10 a.m.
Are you kidding me? On vacation, I would pop open a beer at 8 a.m.
Yeah,
I called it my
100%.
breakfast beer. So, no, but it's triggering to me because it makes me think...
that's normal?
No, it reminds me of how I felt the morning after a big drink night.
Oh, yeah.
And that he's having to pour a big ass glass of champagne at 9 o'clock in the morning, then another one.
Yeah.
To the point where he's already drunk. Now he's drunk by
Right.
the time he gets in the van.
He overshot the mark.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like it happened before. There was a scene where he was in his kitchen. This is early on, might have even been last season.
Yeah.
Where he's pouring himself a glass of champagne in the morning, and he says to his wife at the time,
Yeah.
Michelle, do you want one? And she's like, now.
I remember that.
In the morning. And I remember
and she's like, it's 11 a.m.
I remember clocking it.
When you have those challenges.
Yeah.
Because also, by the way, champagne, and it could be trash champagne. I didn't have to be like the good stuff. That was my drink of choice, which is weird, right?
Yeah, I drank a lot of champagne too.
Yeah, but it was really my preference. If I could have or we've talked about this, the sparkling wines, the cans.
Wines. Yeah.
But watching people drink it in the morning gives me because I remember doing that. And anything that you're drinking out of desperation doesn't taste good. It's not about.
Oh no, it's medicinal.
Yeah, you're just throwing it back.
100%.
So to see him open like a couple bottles of champagne,
that was hard for me.
Yeah, and then do you feel like?
And then I watched as that episode progressed, and he kept getting drunker. They're at the winery.
Yeah,
and he's just knocking back the wines, and
getting messy.
Yeah, it's not that it makes him a bad or an evil character in this reality show. It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And I'm not making an assumption. I'm just watching him drink, and it's making me feel a certain kind of way.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's excessive. At least in these few episodes that are this one episode, let's just say that I'm watching, it's like, oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And I could feel every nerve ending.
And also
alive.
for me, it reminds me, I still have to deal with shame.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. I was talking to Jed. I can't remember. It came up recently. This is my son who's 22. And I went to rehab when he was, I'm 9 years sober. So, he was not 22. He was like 13, 14.
Yeah.
And I asked him, maybe for one of the first times, because he's old enough, somebody brought up that time. And I asked him, did you, oh God, I'll tell you why. Because we were remembering that I had a boyfriend who was a little bit intense.
Mm-hmm.
And he insisted that he come to family therapy. So a scene from a movie I will write, but obviously it will never get produced. But I will write it, is my ex-husband, my young teenage son, and my current boyfriend in family therapy at rehab.
Right.
Then they're having to deal with.
Amazing.
So we were talking about that, and I was like, how did that, do you remember that? Like, I was so mortified, right? Like, I didn't have the wherewithal to say no, because I was like, I'm just good, I'm at rehab, so don't ask me if you can come or not. I will do it. But he, we talked about that. He kind of vaguely remembered that, but I said, did you know? Because you guys said at the time that you didn't remember.
Yeah.
That, or you didn't think that I was an alcoholic. It had never occurred to you.
Right.
And I loved that answer.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
I'm so good at this.
Yeah.
I'm so good
right,
at being an alcoholic.
Of course.
Like, I didn't traumatize my kids at all.
Thank God.
Yeah. Like, guys.
Right.
But then he said, Hawaii. And I took them, just myself, to Hawaii. and it was the three of us, and I was drinking. And he said it was Hawaii when I started to think it might not be normal what was going on.
Right.
And I was so sad because I remembered that trip, and I thought I was doing great.
Holding it together.
I thought I was doing great.
Yeah.
And just the fact that he, at that age, started to be like, something's not right. I mean, the part that is the happy part is it was not long after that I got sober. And he said pretty soon after that, you were really, like, you knew it was an issue. You were addressing it. And,
Yeah, so it didn't go on for too long.
In his mind. But even so, when I watch stuff like All Day Drinking, I kind of get secondhand shame.
So do I.
I feel
that's a really good way to put it, because I think you're pinpointing what I feel when I watch him, when I was watching him drink on that episode. I think it was secondhand shame. It was like that. Ooh, I'm not making sense. I'm saying the wrong things, and I'm gonna regret this tomorrow, and I feel terrible, and my life is falling apart.
I'm gonna have another drink.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's up to him to decide. But
so, guys, cheery show on Bravo.
Oh, I mean,
Valley.
It really is.
Oh, Lillian's kind of way in here.
No, because I want you guys to. Hi, world.
Hi.
I'm learning to actually talk. No, I want you to talk about secondhand shame and shame, because one of the things we wanted to do in our check-in was talk about what you guys have been kind of learning with the pod.
Oh, yeah.
And I think one of the things I find so inspirational about the pod is that we're trying to get rid of a lot of shame
right.
by being very open. So talk to me about that.
Well, speaking of being open, I'm going to answer this very seriously, Lillian. So
that's what I want.
Speaking of I'm being completely facetious. Of being open, I know we've tried to be very real here. I am wearing sweatpants. I'm a sweatpants wearer, and until now,
you're coming out.
Yeah, I'm coming out. Until now, I've been pretending that I do business casual or dressy casual. That's not really me.
No,
I wear sweatpants. I wear sweatpants almost every day of my life. I do two things. I sweatpants. And this is kind of like almost like a
sporty,
chic. Like this is sweatpants forward. Like this is when I'm going out in sweatpants. But I either do this or I do putting on the Ritz, like
all dolled up.
Heels that are like car to bar. I'm not going to drink at the bar, but I'm going to walk from the car to the bar. I'll go full out.
Yeah.
But if it's not full out, this is who I am, world. I just wanted you to know. I think that it's one of the hardest parts about getting sober, and I think looking at your or any addiction that you feel like has really impacted your family or people around you. Yeah, because on the one hand, embarrassment is one thing
that happens. Yeah,
that happens.
Falling down the stairs at the Magic Castle,
throwing up in your Uber. Who hasn't?
Right.
Those things, and especially if you're running, you were running with a crowd, that stuff was kind of happening all the time. It was sort of it was trying to be normalized in a way. So that kind of
that was also during a time when we did a lot of stuff together. So there were a lot of nights out together and a lot of time together, and we were and accidents would happen.
But it just seemed like that was kind of being normalized. Yeah. So there's that kind of embarrassment where you're like, oh, my friends and I are all partying, and then this thing happened, and I have this bruise.
The story to tell you. Yeah.
Right. It's like a story, and it's kind of funny. And then there's the shame. There's the stuff that you did.
The texting, the embarrassed. Yeah.
Or the stuff this weekend I had this conversation with Jed that was probably one of the most frank, where I was like, a couple of times I did stuff with you that I felt really it could have been dangerous. Mm-hmm. And that was a big motivator for me to, but we were having a really, and he, the other thing is, you've done this in front of your kids, and then you're worried that your kids might also have addiction issues because it's genetic, right? So having the finally getting past the shame enough to like talk about, and he's old enough now.
Yeah.
It's not like, I'm not trying to talk to a, 9-year-old.
No.
But he knows, he drinks, he knows about this stuff, and to be able to actually have that conversation and take it out of the realm of shame into the light in a way, and to see that in his own way, he's like, I'm really glad to talk about this stuff because it gives me perspective. And he and my daughter are both very, they're very mindful about what they do around substances. Mm-hmm. So the interesting part is like, how do you turn shame into something kind of productive in a way? Like, this is if you're getting sober, if you're addressing it, that you're on the road to not having to live like that anymore. Right.
Which is kind of the best part.
Yeah.
Of getting sober is to wake up and be like, oh, I don't have to feel any kind of way about anything last night. Do you know? Or yesterday or during the day or anything. I don't have to do any rewinding.
Yeah.
Ever. And that's the best.
And I think shame can be useful. Like, sometimes people are like, these, you shouldn't have any of these feelings. It can be useful in that you can remember. And I think in like, if you're doing a 12-step program, there's a lot of like, you're going to go back and look at that stuff, mm-hmm. and you're going to take responsibility for that stuff, and you're going to you're not going to run from it. You're going to actually observe it.
Yeah.
That kind of, maybe shame in quotation marks can be really helpful in terms of like, I don't want to do that again, mm-hmm. right? But then the part where it's not useful is where you beat yourself up, and you're like, that can actually lead you right back to using or drinking or eating or whatever.
Running from the shame.
Yeah.
Put you right back in the addiction
That'll
cycle.
be the name of our first book, our first
novel. Running from the shame.
Running from the shame.
I love it.
Right?
I love it.
I think, there's the useful way, and then there's the part where it's like not helpful at all.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that for me, being able to talk to my kids about that stuff and sort of like being past feeling so
it helps you get through it to face it head on.
The other thing I was going to say is the other great thing about like dealing with shame is like living amends, meaning like don't necessarily go back to the past all the time and be like, oh, I'm so sorry I did this, I'm so sorry I did that. Like, for me, so much of like my relationship with my kids and my family is I am living my amends to you by not doing that stuff again.
Right.
That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes, that I don't that's not what I'm talking about. It's like, I'm not drinking and using. So those, that's my living amends to you. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be present. That helps with shame a lot too, where they start to go like, oh, it's kind of nice having you actually here.
and here.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Not just physically.
No, just like here.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in your relationship with your kids?
Oh, 100%.
Really?
Yeah. I relish every second I'm with them, and I'm taking everything they're saying in, and the way they laugh with each other. I'm really paying attention. And
I love that.
Yeah. It's like before, if we were at a restaurant, I would be more, preoccupied with what wine they have on their wine list. Is there time for a third? Because now they can drive me home, and thinking and just going through all the kind of the obsession with alcohol at the restaurant. Whereas I'm not like really taking in their laughter with each other, and and when you remove that substance. And you're focused on the way they're laughing with each other, you realize how much you lost, right? But here
it is.
Here I am.
Yeah.
And there's also like being in New York with my daughter. She's finishing up NYU or just finished up NYU, so helping her move out and just having like the energy to be in her room and helping her. Okay, so now we got to take the Uber. We got to put all the stuff in the back of the Uber. We got to drive it to the storage unit down on right. And if I was drinking, I would have been drinking that night, the night before the move.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have had like all this energy to get to the storage unit. I mean, it's a grind. New York City is a grind.
Yeah, doing something
and then throw in moving out of a dorm room and having to store just all that
logistics
stuff.
And
just all of it. There's a bunch of other examples, but just really like in for it. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's roll up our sleeves. And I wasn't like that before.
Oh wow! You'd be like, who can we outsource this to?
1,000,000%. Who could do this for us?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, let's get it done.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. So things like that. You know, I'm really in the trenches with them.
Oh, I think that's so beautiful. Yeah. What you said is so true. Like, you're not just observing your own, you get to observe how they are in the world more. Because it's like when part of it is the actual fog of drinking or using or whatever but I think a unifying thing about addiction in general is obsession, meaning
sorry to cut you off, but like you just nailed it again. It's not that I was rip roaring drunk every time I was with them.
Right.
It's not that I couldn't have gone to New York and helped her move out of her dorm and would be suffering a major hangover. I don't know that that's true. Yeah. Right. I wasn't pie-eyed all the time, you know, but I was preoccupied with when I was going to get the next drink.
100%.
How far, where's the closest bar to her dorm so that we can get a drink before we go out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Or mini bar. Am I going to be able to get back to the hotel and have a couple pre-games?
Yes.
Get that sparkling wine can out of my luggage, put it in the fridge where no one will see it.
So when that's removed,
hide it. Yep.
Right? It
100%.
frees up a lot of space for being present and taking care of what needs to be taken care of.
And it is, and that extends, if, you know, not everybody has these relationships with their kids. You know, some people don't have kids or don't want to have kids or what have you.
Right.
But that's true across the board in your relationships and all those things, just this. And sometimes, you know, it can be too much, you know, and that's when I feel like, you know, the world, you know, I deal in myself. I get overstimulated and, like, you know, the world is very clear sometimes. And that's when I just go into my little, like, you know, cozy nap pod and, you know. Yeah. But yeah, that freedom from thinking. And I think, like, when I was a smoker, but the number one for me has been, like, my disordered eating. And, you know, I mean, it has taken many forms, but the major one was when I was anorexic.
Yeah.
And so much of, I think, the quote unquote relief I was getting from that, from the real world, was the obsession, the constant talk in my head about food and thinking about it and the next thing and the exercise and the body and this. I mean, it's this form of self-obsession.
A way to escape other stuff that you have going on or your feelings or like drinking does.
Yeah, for me it was 100%. Yeah. And then when I was drinking again after I, you know, relapsed, I was like, oh my God, this is just, you know, because I had taken that long break and I wasn't really thinking about it back then. But I was like, this is just like being anorexic, is that I am thinking all the time of, like, when I, you know, it's just the thing, right? But yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier about how in many ways, like, I don't know, do you experience some of the stuff? Like, we both grew up in LA.
Yes, we did.
And I mean, I remember you as a little girl, like, there was a lot of talk about you modeling.
Yeah.
You were.
I wanted to be a model.
Yeah. And also, like, your mom was kind of like, you know, like she should be. And I remember all of that. And then there was kind of, at the same time, it was like, but she needs to lose a few pounds.
Right.
And
yeah.
how did that affect you?
Well, you know, probably not great. to be honest.
Not that was kind of a softball. Like, how did that affect you?
Yeah,
you were like,
so well.
You know what?
Not so well. No, listen, I grew up in a time. I have to say that the era right now that my daughter grew up in, is
a little different.
Just such a safer space to land as far as being built. You know, just a little bit rounder, heavier, you know, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I grew up in the Kate Moss era of, you know, heroin chic body frames, you know.
Yeah.
And the girls in my high school, my best friends, were always these cute little, you know, petite, skinny girls. And I was, you know, tall. Yeah. I was always very tall. Yeah. And, you know, and heavy and, you know, I don't want to say fat because that's not.
You've never been.
No, I just want, like, just, you know, caring a little bit more than everybody else.
Yeah.
You know?
And for modeling, you know, they tell a size 2 to be a size 0.
Yeah.
And if you're a size 6, by the way, or 10, which is, I think, 10 or 12 is like the average size for an
14
American
or
women.
yeah, 14 and 16 is. And I was, back then in the 80s, when I wanted to be so much desperately be a model.
Yeah.
Christy Brinkley was my idol.
I remember you had her picture
everywhere.
Up. Yeah.
Posters of Christy Brinkley.
And you looked
I did look like her.
Like you guys were in the same,
right
genre.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was a different time, and that wasn't the goal, the goal was to be super skinny. So high school was hard. College was harder. I had fun in college. I was drunk through most of college, and that may have something to do with my body my body image issues.
Well, because that stuff lifts. It's crazy. Like, you can be counting calories like a demon.
Yeah.
And when I was like trying to control my drinking, especially when my kids were around, I was very conscientious about how many calories were in my daily allotment.
Right.
Which is probably the reason why I liked like packaged drinks, because I knew how many calories were in. So I'd be like, I get 4 of those.
The tricks of the trade.
Right? I get 4 of those, and that'll maintain, and then I will have had that many calories.
Well, I wasn't counting any calories.
But I was going to say, when I didn't have those restrictions, when I was like, I'm going out, I mean, thousands of calories. And like, so the of alcohol, of the food after the alcohol, of the,
oh God, it was college. I was drunk all the time.
And it just lifts, like all that self-consciousness and like the counting of that part lifts until the next morning.
You're right. Right.
When you're like, what have I done?
Yeah. So I think, I just grew up in a different time. I would have loved to have grown up in this day and age.
It's interesting.
Minus the social media.
I was going to say, like, I think it's a really mixed bag.
As far as the acceptance of
different body
types and everybody, just that kind of just went away. That it's just so much more accepting.
Yes, and
okay.
I think that we are very, very fortunate that we have daughters who are very they're very like telegenic, and so in some ways they get a lot of validation already for being beautiful people.
Yeah,
and so that is one thing, but also they have really healthy self-esteem.
They do,
because we were drunk moms, but we were great moms.
Right?
No, but I mean, from many different angles, they have healthy self-esteem. But I wonder if they weren't as like, there's a sort of stereotype of like a kind of beauty. They very much both fit into that stereotype, right? If you're an outlier. And the body acceptance stuff can be great, but now we're looking at a bunch of people who were body positive celebrities and influencers and all these things, and they're using
Ozempic
and Wegovy and all these things, and all of a sudden they're skinny people.
Right,
and
which is a whole different.
So I think that sends a whole lot. But I know what you're saying is that
the advertising and the casting and the things you see in the magazines and on TV and on Instagram and on socials. There's such a great, variance in body sizes and
ish. I mean, you're not a TikToker.
No, I'm not.
And you're not really...
I'm absolutely not a TikToker.
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit and say that there is more representation.
More representation, okay.
For sure. And that can be really helpful. And there's more... Like, what I notice is women in LA, I don't know if this is true everywhere, who are wearing things that I never would have worn because of, like, they actually have, like... regular bodies.
Right.
And they have cellulite like everybody does.
Muffin
and I
top.
see it and I'm like, you're not hiding it.
Right.
Like I
wore the sweatshirt around the waist.
Oh, 100%.
Probably for 12 years straight.
Oh, yeah.
Always a sweatshirt around my waist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, someone was like, I read something on social media today that was like, okay, so cool, I'm going to wear shorts and I'm going to show you my legs. Like, cool, I'm going to do that. Like, it was like, I was like, that's how I feel about shorts, right? Yeah. But you're watching people. So there is a difference. I do agree with you. But then I'm also feeling like we know, and I know especially from like making the movie To the Bone, which I made. Plug, Netflix, starring the very famous now Lily Collins.
Yeah.
But I know from making that movie that eating disorders are as rampant, if not more so, than they've ever been. And that influencers and like the Kardashian impossible body is doing huge damage to people's self-esteem because it's not an achievable
look. Yeah.
It's not
aesthetic.
You don't find it in nature very often.
Right.
They don't have natural bodies or natural beauty.
Right.
Some people do, but they don't, and they are two of the there are 4 of the most influential women in the world.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna talk.
Yeah.
No, it's the filter. It's the filter world.
Yeah.
It's that you are constantly seeing people with filters on, or you're seeing people. You feel like you're looking at a reality through your phone, and in reality, the reality is that that's been curated.
Yeah,
like
sure.
that the filmed day in the life. That like those aren't actual day in the life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is what I was going to try to.
Yeah, that would be
gently
difficult.
Nudge you.
That would be difficult to grow up in. I like I just said, like I think I like the representation.
Yes,
you know?
I agree.
But I don't like the social media part of it, and I would never want to grow up in the social media world ever. I think that we are so lucky and blessed that we got to grow up in a time when there were no cell phones, and none of this was even a glimmer in anybody's
No, the idea
eye.
that like when Lane and I'm sure Drew, like when they were in middle school and stuff, the idea that the social life never ends, meaning like you go home from school. When we used to go home from school,
you were done.
There was a phone call.
Yeah.
There was you might talk to your friends, but you were sort of like, not by choice, but you were sort of unplugged, right? Yeah. You talked to the people you talked to, but you weren't like still at school.
No, you went
where
into
you
a different...
were dealing with everybody looking or not looking or talking or not talking. So the thing that becomes this like 24/7, and now everybody knows where. This sounds like a real old person thing. The Find My Friends thing, where not only that, they know exactly where everybody is.
Oh yeah, Drew knows where all of her friends are at any given moment.
100%.
And I just look at her and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any opinions on it.
Yeah.
I really don't, because it's so
just
out
is.
of this world to me, and in not anything I could even begin to relate to.
Yeah.
Keeping tabs on my friends.
Yeah.
That I don't even. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, well, I know she's here because da, da, da. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. But then that can hurt your feelings because
you're not with them.
You're not with them, and they said, there's
I can't even imagine.
Many
I can't
layers.
Even imagine.
So I agree, and I do think it's even helped. It's funny because when I was doing Dietland, I did Dietland. That's a show that you can watch on Hulu. Yeah. Back when I was making things. But that process helped my self-image because I was around people who, the whole idea of like, loving your body the way it was and showing that proudly, like I understood it intellectually, but then being around a community that embraced that and, recognizing, that there were all kinds of shapes and sizes and they were all beautiful in their own way. Right?
Yeah.
It actually, I did start to think like, well, it's not, it's not like a disease that I have, like cellulite, right? It's not like my fault.
Right.
Because, the advertising and all this stuff, like the influence of the culture, or advertising culture especially, makes you feel like getting older is your fault. Having, not being a perfect weight is your fault. All these things, skin, everything, it's preventable. If you only buy these things, you will fix that.
Right.
And that stuff seeps in. So to the point where you are so like, this is my fault. Right. I mean, I remember when I realized that I thought getting older and looking older was my fault.
Because you didn't moisturize in the 80s.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, shit. I should have started that way longer
Well, and
ago.
then if we go back to advertising and stuff, because this does deal with aging too, or you're reading magazines, there's this stuff where they're like, and it goes to what you're saying, Lily, about the filters. They'll be like, so-and-so is amazing looking at 60. And they'll have some picture of a woman who's 6 years old on the beach who has no wrinkles.
Yeah, well, because it's all touched up.
Right? And no cellulite.
Yeah.
And a horrible thigh gap. That's a terrible thing to know about. Right? But all this stuff, and they look 20 years younger.
Yeah.
And some of that is filters and some of that is editing.
Genetics,
and
too.
some of it is fucking plastic surgery.
Right.
Like a lot of it is plastic surgery, and I'm like the first one to say, like, I have partook.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, I had mixed feelings about that as like a feminist woman. Like, is that like, am I? But also, like, I think if there's a part of my disordered eating that still exists, is that voice in my head that says, looking older
is your fault.
Is my fault.
Yeah.
And it is preventable if I only do all these things.
I think I took a little bit. I'm going to pat myself on the back because I think I helped move the collective body shame, on women. I think I took part in something that moved that forward. I think a little bit, which was being a plus size model. I don't know if you know that I was a plus size model.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
In all of my research,
Yes,
I love that so much
because it was not a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's true. When you were doing that, I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah, it was just when the plus size modeling, sort of
that's right.
community opened up and Ford models created a division called 12 plus.
Yeah.
Or 10 plus. I don't
know. Oh
remember
my God,
what
10 plus.
Yeah.
Normal plus.
Normal plus. And I went to New York and met with Ford and they signed me and I started modeling for Macy's. And I even did some really cool things for the budget, like Flaunt magazine.
Yeah, I remember.
And but anyway, that was like that was the advent of the plus size model.
That's right.
And that continued, and I think they've kind of never looked back.
Yeah,
as far as representing the curvier woman.
Yeah, no, and I remember that, and I was like so proud and so happy for you because it was like validating the fact that you were beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Right, you were an R, and it was like, oh, finally.
And by the way, I was a size like 10, 12, which is what I am now. You know what I mean? Like it's
I wear
normal.
Size 10.
It's normal.
It's comfy.
That was plus size, and it's almost like when they would say that, like you said, the size 2 model was told to become a size 0.
Yeah.
The same with the plus size. I'm not saying the industry changed that much in the way that but they did say you need to be a size 10, 12, and not like a plus size, which like an 18, 16, 18, or whatever it is.
And I do think it's interesting, just like the other thing that I've found with my own self-image and things like that is you have also that moment, though, where you're like, oh my God, well, she's gorgeous and she's plus size, but I'm not.
Right.
It's that like, I love everyone else's beauty, but you still have trouble turning that inward.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, we were kind of joking about the sweatpants, Marty.
Yeah.
But I will say, I do think it's a really good metaphor for what we're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Because it's like, we all want to show up in sweatpants.
Hell yeah.
Except for maybe Megan on a plane, which we'll have issues. We'll talk about later.
Nice sweatpants.
Yeah.
Like Viore.
Yeah.
Boy, we really do deserve, like,
Yeah. But I think the more and more we show up the way we want to, I think we can.
Yes.
In public.
Yes.
Or on a podcast.
Yes.
We are moving the needle again.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm going to try to wrap it around, because I see that connection to how we're talking about everyone's different addictions.
Yeah.
And things that make them human.
Yeah.
We're talking about them out loud.
Yeah.
And when it's out loud, other people can be like, wait a minute.
Well, and to think, too, that when I hear from other people or women that they might do or feel the same things, and I realize that I'm not, because there's also the voice in your head that's just like, well, you're alone in this. And then I can look at you and be like, well, if you think that, Lillian, like, that's so not true. Right? You know, you can be,
absolutely,
you can say like, oh, well, that's silly, but it's true. I do think that some of the plus size stuff can be pretty confusing, because oftentimes those women are so like, the funny, like in Dietland, Joy Nash, who's amazing, is the star, and she is drop dead gorgeous.
Right.
But it was a struggle to get a show on the air that had number one on the call sheet, who was she would say this proudly, like a fat woman, a fat activist, and I think that I don't know that we could have done that if she wasn't just also stunning.
Stunning. Number one on the call sheet. What does that term mean?
Oh, Megan.
No, I love this because it is like that moment where you're like, oh my God, I've been in this bubble for too long. It's a status thing on a set.
Okay.
Where when you put together a call sheet for a show, I don't know why I'm explaining this when Marty's right there.
Because I used to be in that business. Now I'm in development.
She's not. Yeah. She's in development.
Yeah.
Not like
totally different thing.
But usually the top billed actor or actress is
Tom Cruise would be number one on the call sheet.
He's number one on all the call sheets. Yes.
On God's call sheet.
Yes. Exactly. That like blows my mind, and sometimes I'm like, oh, this is why we are all struggling these days.
Why is there a hierarchy? Why can't everybody just be on the call sheet?
It'll be like something you talk about or negotiate.
Oh, it's
or
a
get
huge thing.
approved.
It's a huge thing.
It's a whole thing.
No, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, in some cases, it's just super clear who's number one.
Yeah.
Then it's
who's number two?
A discussion about who's number two.
Oh, that's like Andy Cohen's couch during a reunion.
Yes, exactly. Why is Michelle on the end of the couch? That was a big question on Bravo Watch What Crappens.
Oh, is there a reunion coming up?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
And they, because they're them, know exactly where people are on the couch.
It's amazing.
But yeah, no, it is a whole thing. That said, I don't know how many shows besides there are a few comedies where the star, the undeniable star, was a fat woman.
Right.
You know, on the drama side, I think it's been pretty rare.
Yeah, no, I think it is rare. I think it's rare on all sides.
Yeah. I mean, I think as Lillian was saying, like the thing that helps is to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. And
we're going to keep doing it.
We're going to keep doing it.
We're probably time's up.
We're 50. We're 50. Well, I'm 50 plus.
You're 50 plus. I'm 50 plus.
50 plus magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could keep talking. We didn't even talk about, I wanted to bring up that book, Colors of the Dark.
The Colors of the Dark.
The Colors of the Dark. But we'll talk about that next time.
We can talk about our
we should do a book talk.
I'm down for
book
talk.
Which is, by the way, book talk is a thing on TikTok.
It is? Okay, good. Well, I read more than your average bear, so...
Yeah, most bears don't read.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So then I read a lot more than your average bear.
Yeah.
But I would love to talk books.
Okay.
Because that is one of my addictions.
I would love to know. Here's something I wanted to say, though, because it's just you and me. Dr. Lynn Lerman,
yes,
has been a guest in the first, batch, and I think it would be really interesting if our listeners, if they have any questions for Dr. L next time.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Because she's going to come back. We're going to do some more of these.
Yeah.
And she's going to come back, and I think that it would be really so. I think you can put in the DM on our socials, and obviously you do not have to say who you are. You don't have to self-identify or anything. But if you have questions about that you'd like to ask an actual expert about,
yeah, sure, yeah,
I think that would be a really interesting
to pick a few questions. that people
because as much as we do the silly, we do have this avail ourselves of this this super expert, and
I'm down.
And our pods are. My Addiction Pod, pretty much across, including TikTok.
Yes, across the board.
Across the board.
Yeah, you can ask us questions, ask questions to Dr. Lerman.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
We can bring up and talk books.
Everyone,
half the audience just fell asleep.
Yeah.
So.
No.
Oh, no, but that's my addiction.
That's your addiction. And also, I know that one of the genres that you're addicted to.
Yeah.
Do you want to share?
Sure. Romance novels.
Yeah.
I have, ridiculous.
Did you read Yellowstone? Not Yellowstone, Ransom Canyon.
No.
Wait, what? That just got weirder.
Sorry, it's
the Yellowstone.
Ransom Canyon is it was a romance novel, and they turned it into a TV show with Josh Duhamel and Minka Kelly.
That's what that show is.
Oh, you want to binge something great and fun and sexy and hot.
Okay.
That is a great show.
Check it. I read all kinds. I read a lot of historical. I also read.
You like a bodice. You like a.
I like a bodice ripper, and I like a lot of gay romance. I read a lot of different, all configurations.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I partake
amazing.
as well. It's really like those books are. There's so many good ones.
It's been a magical, positive addiction in my life, even though
same.
I am now currently surrounded by stacks of books at my apartment. So,
I love it. I love it.
Best friends are books. All right.
Have
Thanks
a
for listening.
great day. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to My Addiction. As a reminder, this podcast is meant for entertainment. We are not medical practitioners, and anything on the podcast does not constitute medical advice or treatment. Please consult your own medical professionals at all times. My Addiction is a Tiny Pyro production. It was created and hosted by Marty Noxon and Megan Weaver. It is produced by Marty Noxon, Megan Weaver, Maria Grasso, and Lillian Holman. It is edited by Lillian Holman. Our graphics were designed by Lane Bynum. Our social media is managed by Aziza Abu-Boutain and Ashley Lindsay. Special thanks to Allison Shano, Rebecca Steinberg, Amy Gregonis, and Melissa Tavarit.